Hello everyone, my name is David Litzenberger, and today I'm here to persuade you that the wages that minor league baseball players are being paid is not only a direct violation of their civil rights, but is so far below poverty wages that it's making their job essentially impossible. As previously mentioned in my speech to inform, minor league baseball players make on average about $4 per hour, and that's just about half of the federal minimum wage. And in addition to that, they're frequently working 60 to 70 hours per week in poor living and traveling conditions. These conditions and pay make their jobs seemingly impossible to do well, let alone be enjoyable. Minor league baseball players are at the baseball field, in the gym, or playing games on average about 10 hours per day. They're putting wear and tear on their bodies for hours straight every single day for 3 to 5 months in a row, playing baseball games in front of thousands of people and making the MLB a multi-billion-dollar industry while getting paid breadcrumbs. So it's important to realize how little these players are getting by comparing it to what the body actually needs to perform at the level that they do. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the body actually needs. So on average, from the opinion of kinesiologists and sports nutritionists, a professional baseball player needs an absolute minimum of 3,000 calories per day to stop their body from completely deteriorating. And so it's optimal, according to these kinesiologists from livestrong.com, to make sure they eat about 4,500 calories per day to maintain perfect health and maintain their weight and their body composition. So when they creep lower towards 3,000 and sometimes even below 3,000, it puts their body at risk of immediate injury, and it also creates the possibility for long-term developing injuries and lingering injuries, like strains and pulls that don't really ever go away because their body's not in a position to fix itself and keep itself healthy. So that's the absolute minimum, is about 3,000. So 3,000 calories, what does it actually look like? So to put it in perspective, that's about 33 scrambled eggs, or about half of this Costco box of minute white rice. About 15 cups is 3,000 calories, give or take, of white rice. And so now that we know what they need, what can they actually afford? I asked 3 former minor league players to tell me their story about their diet, what they got to eat, and what they had to go through to make sure they ate enough. And the first player is a coach here from Spokane Falls. His name is Justin Jacobs. He was a second baseman. He's about 6'1" and 180 pounds, give or take. And he said that his main diet was eggs, tuna, rice, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. When you travel in the minor leagues of professional baseball, the hosting team is required to feed you before the game, and 9 times out of 10, they give you peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Singular. They give you 1 peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Not the most nutritious thing, not that many calories. Sometimes he said he could afford meat, and sometimes they would play a team that would give them chicken, so they could make like chicken sandwich, salad, whatever it may be, or they could just eat the chicken by itself. He said that his average calorie intake was about 2,600, but usually it got as low as 2,200 sometimes, which is significantly lower than what's needed for him to maintain his body composition and stay healthy. The next player is Jesse Hodges. He's an old coach of mine, and he's currently in the minor leagues still, actually, in the Cubs organization. He's 6'2" and about 220 pounds, so he's much larger than Justin Jacobs was. He eats a lot of eggs. He eats rice, tuna, ground turkey, and then, of course, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And so he requires a minimum of 3,600 calories, as where average players require 3,000, because he's about 2 inches taller and 25 pounds heavier than the average player. And so because he required so much to eat, he got closer to that 3,000 mark, even though the 3,000 mark doesn't necessarily apply to him. He said he was typically about 2,900 calories, which is much better than what Justin got, but some days it would be about 2,600, more often than not, which is about 1,000 calories less than what his body needs to maintain his body composition and stay healthy. And the last is Eric Sim. He is a former minor league pitcher, and he's kind of leading the charge to fix the minor league system and make sure these guys get pay. And so I was on the phone with him and I asked, how tall are you, how much do you weigh, or when you played, and what do you get to eat? So he's about 5'10", 190 pounds, and most of what he got to eat was peanut butter jelly sandwiches, tuna, eggs, and rice, which is pretty standard apparently. And he was fairly below average in height and weight. He was about 5 to 10 pounds lighter than the average player and about 2 inches shorter than the average player. So for him, a minimum of 2,500 calories would be sufficient, and most of the time he only got about 2,100. And the reason that they can only get so much is when you're bigger you can eat more at a single time. They don't actually have time to eat throughout the day like they're supposed to. And in addition to that, the pay is flat regardless if you're in Los Angeles or Wyoming or New York. So $4 per hour in Montana or Wyoming goes a lot farther than it does in New York or Los Angeles, and that's why Jesse can afford to eat more than Justin and Eric could. So it's important to note that with these players and their diets, they had a few things in common: rice, eggs, tuna to an extent, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And that's because they are the cheapest form of calories that you can really get that aren't bad for you per se. Obviously you can eat too much of anything, and that's what they ended up going through. I talked to Justin about it just a couple of days ago, and I said, what was it like eating the same exact thing over and over again while trying to perform in baseball games? And he told me that he kind of went numb to the flavor of it. So it was kind of just eating tofu to an extent. It just didn't taste like anything. So he would eat eggs in the morning, he would eat his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he would eat his tuna and his rice throughout the day. And it got to the point where after a while, if he didn't switch up his diet, his body actually started rejecting the food. And so what happens, he couldn't actually digest it, he would end up puking it up. And when he could keep it down, his body had adapted to processing that food for so long that it became inefficient in actually processing it and taking the macronutrients out of the food. So although he was getting his 2,600 calories or whatever it may be in per day, which is pretty close to what he needed, his body actually only took the macronutrients from about 2,100 of them because it got too used to eating the same food and it diluted the macronutrients that it ended up getting. So in conclusion, these athletes are 3 of the thousands that are all in the same positions. They're underpaid, they're overworked, and they're constantly straddling the lines of poverty and malnourishment while chasing their dreams for just above $4 an hour. They live in closets of apartments, they live on air mattresses, and they live in buses, spending 10 months a year away from their family and only getting paid for 3 to 5 of it. When they are getting paid, they're typically on a 12-hour bus trip or playing baseball games or at the gym. And so what they go through is unlike any other job or career in America today. It's the only form of employment that still allows their employees to go through these conditions to make a living, if you want to call it a living. $4 an hour is nowhere close. It's significantly below the poverty wage. And so the time has come. It's time to change the reality of life for minor league baseball players and fix the injustices that they've gone through for decades. Thank you.